What is going on, everybody? My name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, bringing you guys another episode of r/ProRevenge. Before I do, though, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, as well as make sure you got notifications turned on. That way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. Sodium chloride, hey hey hey, goodbye. A Sparky's Tale. This is a bit of a read, but hey, the title will make sense at some stage. I promise. I'll explain some stuff as we go, but as always, there's a glossary at the end. Some years ago, I was working FIFO, fly in, fly out, at a mine. Leave the smallish town I was working in at the time, and fly to the mines for 2 weeks. Fly back home for 1 week. Rinse, repeat. As a dual trade Sparky/Instro, it was a big hours and lots of beer tickets. Sparky/Instro, electrician/instrumentation electrician. With all the fat stacks of bills I was being paid, I decided to buy a fixer-upper house that I could work on during my weeks off, with a view to selling at some stage. My construction industry mates would help on occasion for beer and barbecue. This is the way. This house was an old wooden single-story, 4-bed, 1.5-bath affair on a half-acre, 2,000 square meters / 21,780 square foot with a big shed. Seriously, the shed was a big 4-bay job with power and water, and a John Deere ride-on mower for all that green-ish. It had come up at an estate sale, the previous owners having been there for over 25 years. It needed the usual paint and mending, a fair bit of modernization, a bit of renovation, but overall was a solid house in an established neighborhood. All the blocks around there were half-acre. The first day I was moving in, I hadn't been there for a half hour, and having one of the neighbors visiting, there are 2 types of neighbors who come over within an hour. The "here's a casserole, welcome to the neighborhood" type, and the Bill and Jenny type. Bill and Jenny, antagonists. Bill was a retired barrister, Jenny a retired surgeon. A barrister is a highly skilled specialist solicitor who wears a wig. A solicitor is a regular lawyer who doesn't wear a wig. I had to ask a barrister some questions regarding an upcoming court case. Thought I'd just ring him up. 30 minutes on the phone cost me $500. Wigs are no joke. Anyway, Bill and Jenny came over with the "hello peasant, this is a quiet neighborhood," yada yada bullshit. They'd been at their house for over 20 years. I was a courteous and respectful person, and explained that I would be in and out due to being FIFO contractored. Didn't party, and the only noise would be fixing up the house. Well, Bill and Jenny were most assuredly not impressed. I don't know if it was the contractor bit or the fixing up the house bit, but I don't think their faces could have looked any more sour or horrified if I'd leaned in and given them a big lick up the face. I received a legal brief on the noise laws and repeated assertions that this was a quiet neighborhood. Bill was also kind enough to let me know that everyone around here has pride in their gardens/lawns, and it would be a shame if I were any different. Jesus, fuck, Bill. Okay, I get it. Bill has no chill. I let him wander off with his alpha attitude and went about moving on. Dave and Beck. Dave and Beck from over the other fence came over just on sunset with their teenage kids, beers and pizza. Dave was a high school principal and Beck was a nurse. They asked how it went with Bill and Jenny, and we had a good laugh. Dave told me how Bill comes over and gives unsolicited gardening advice. Dave, Beck, and their kids were tops. All through the first day, I'd seen Bill pottering around his garden. Garden isn't the right word, though. Apart from the house, their half-acre was the local botanical gardens. Gazebo, pool, pond, and all. Dave told me how Bill bragged about his rare trees and flowers and ish. Can you tell I love gardening? Honestly, grass is just something you pull up to pave or concrete over. After the first week, I'd moved in and had begun the plans for the work I wanted to do. With the title to the house had come a copy from the previous owner's application to build a deck off the rear and side of the house. Nice, big deck. I stepped out of the plans, decided that this big, beautiful deck would do nicely, and had my people begin looking into whether or not these plans were still valid or needed updating. I'd also serviced the mower in my big shed and done the lawn, to the not so surreptitious scrutiny of Bill. Then it was off to the mine for 2 weeks. Each week off, I'd catch up on sleep and work a bit. This went on for a few months until I got my first proper quarterly utility bill, power, water, etc. Now I could continue a habit I'd started years earlier. Just like everyone does when I'd moved in, I recorded the power and water meter readings in my utilities diary. It's a good tool to monitor power/water usage. Comes in handy if you suspect a leak or power issues. Everyone has one, right? Now that I'd had a bill, I could keep records. The issue unfolds. Month 5, I decided to replace the electrical switchboards in the house and big shed, fuse box/breaker panel/load center/distribution board/ I don't know where you live and what you call it there. To do this, I killed the power at the front main switch at the meter box. This means my whole block would have no power. While changing out the switchboards, I'd also do a full test of the electrical cabling, outlets, etc. This testing was done by law prior to sale, but not by me, so of course I had to check it. 2 things were weird during this time. The cable over to the shed tested not as expected. Bill was watering some of his flower beds by hand. There are now some readers who have guessed the underlying corpus delicti in this tale. Some have probably figured out what the title means. Bill's whole garden, like mine, had an automatic irrigation system. At set times and days, the whole grounds would get watered by a pump and timers. This usually happened 3 times a week around sunset. His flower beds had misters, potted plants had drippers, and the lawn had the pop-up rotating chuck 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 sprinklers. I'd never seen Bill water by hand with a hose. Weird. The shed circuit intimated that it either had a fault in the underground table or it had some electrical equipment connected, even though I'd unplugged everything for testing. So, the undergrounds then. I'd have to try and figure out the undergrounds and investigate. This would mean pulling them out and possibly replacing them, but that could wait for tomorrow. I'd just do the house switchboard that day. Next day, I borrowed a cable locator from a mate and traced the shed undergrounds, marking with my favorite pink paint. The shed undergrounds were about 1 meter/3 feet inside my fence line, and were fed from the power meter box at the front of the property. About halfway between the house and shed, I ran into more weird. It appeared that there was a branch off of the underground shed power cable, heading into Bill's property. Looking over the fence, the first thing I could see in line with this branch was Bill's little hut that housed his pool pump/filter/irrigation controls/irrigation manifolds/valves. This hut was about 3 meters/10 feet inside his fence line. Because this cable locator also located water pipes, I found that the shed water pipe also branched at this point. Things were less weird now. After marking the whole underground services trench, I packed up the gear and went about changing out the house switchboard and had a nice think. The plan was formed. The next day, I got to my people to look into public records of when Bill's pool in my shed had been built. I also went about and bought some cameras and a recorder. The last couple of days of the week, I did a few things. Using surveyor's pegs hammered into the ground, I marked out where the big beautiful deck would be going. I didn't want anyone suspicious, thinking about why I'd marked the shed underground services trench. I put up cameras, one facing down the side of the house that would capture the water and power meter at the front of the property, and one facing my shed which would inadvertently capture Bill's pool hut. Perfectly legal. I installed a mini power meter just for the shed circuit so I could monitor power usage for the shed. I changed my irrigation timers to match Bill's just in case. The last thing I did before heading back into the mine was turn the shed power circuit off and the main water valve off. Of course, the meter readings went into my utility diaries. My grounds might not be watered for 2 weeks, but sometimes you gotta break a few eggs. And everything was that smug green shade anyway. It could do with being taken down a peg. When I got home on the next week off, I casually went over to the meters, and wouldn't you know it, the brand new power meter for the shed had numbers on it, mainly because it was now turned on. The water meter had a higher reading than the water valve when it was turned on. So big old bold Bill, huh? Just leaving this stuff on for me to find. Next, I checked the cameras. See Bill at his pool hut the day after I've left, looking at the irrigation system with puzzlement. See Bill walking off frame to appear on the other camera looking at the meters. See Bill turning the water and power on. See Bill going back to his place, checking the irrigation system. See the sprinklers come on. I'd also had a call while at the mine from my people telling me that Bill's pool in my shed had gone in at around the same time 10 years ago. Bill, you silly wig-wearing wanker. Phase 2 of the plan included making the hole deeper for Bill. One day when he was out in the garden, I called over to him and asked if he'd seen anyone messing around with the power/water meters. The meters were at the front of the property, like they did back in the day to make it easier for the meter readers from the utility companies. This meant that kinda anyone could come and mess with them. Bill came over and said no. I made sure to stand in a particular spot at the fence so this exchange was captured by the camera. When I left for the mine, I not only recorded the meter numbers and turned the power/water off, I put an out-of-service tag on the shed circuit and another on the water valve. These were dated and I took photos. So now we can establish just how bold Bill was, because when I got home, the tags were gone and the power and water was on again. I went again through the asking over the fence shtick, and again Bill denied any scienter. 2 chances to own up. Okie dokie. Phase 3. Just so everyone's caught up, Bill had been at his property for 20 years. The pool and shed went in 10 years ago. The pool hut with the pump and filter and irrigation system went in at the same time. You could see that the hut had been designed to house all of it. Bill might have been knowingly stealing power and water for 10 years. He certainly had no problem stealing power and water from me. Fuck Bill and all of his green shit. I visited a couple of mates to pick up some items and went to work. In the shed, I got the borrowed 200 liters/53-gallon drum, filled it with water, and emptied a 20 kilogram/44-pound bag of goodness into it. It took a while to stir it all in and dissolve. I set up the dosing pump for the drum, and ran a lead over to my irrigation system to power it and turn it on. At 2 a.m., with my headlamp on, feeling all Jason Bourne, I went and turned my water off. After running the taps in the house to remove the pressure, I put some plastic down near the power/water branch for the dirt and very carefully dug a hole. Exposing the water line going over to Bill's place, I fixed a tapping saddle to the water pipe. Remember, this pipe over the Bill's place was coming off my water pipe. Onto the tapping saddle, I fitted the end of a length of small clear plastic tubing and filled in the hole. The grass fit back into place just nicely. The plastic tubing I ran along the fence to the shed, tucked into the grass, and attached to the other end of the dosing pump. The delivery system was ready. Then I cleaned up and went to bed. Later that day, around midday, I went next door and knocked. One last chance, Bill. Jenny answered the door, and I asked if I could have a word with both of them about their pool and irrigation water/power. Jenny knew. She paused for a heartbeat and said they didn't have anything to talk about. As she was closing the door, I said that if Bill wanted to come and see me, I'd be home. Now you might be thinking, okay, this looks like it's gonna be a bit of an extreme response. Here's what I'd put up with since I'd moved in. Bill or Jenny asking me to keep the noise of the power tools down when I was working during the day. I only ever started after 9 a.m. and finished before 5. Our houses were about 100 meters/330 feet apart. I was disturbing their gazebo time during the day. Bill and or Jenny called the police to my place for noise complaints when I had mates over helping. The worksite radio was low and we were just being jocular, not rowdy. Dave and Beck had no issue and came over for the barbecues. Bill had one of my trees cut down while I was at work because it was too close to my fence. Yeah, okay, frangipani flowers do kinda get everywhere, but still, it'd been there for years and he could have asked. Bill tried to legally bully the local council into denying my big beautiful deck plans. The deck plans had again been approved by the local council. Let me say this again, Bill tried to fuck with my deck. So at about 5 p.m., Bill's irrigation turned on, and so did my dosing pump. Have you ever heard the term salting the earth? The bag I'd emptied into the 200 liter/53-gallon drum was pool salt. Sodium chloride. When Bill's irrigation turns off, the drum was empty. It had pumped all of the salt water into Bill's irrigation system. 2 a.m. I, Jason, borned the tubing out of the hole, sealed the tapping saddle, and packed it up. The next morning, I took my mate's drum and pump back. At about 8 a.m., I started digging up the service trench, all the way from the meter box to the shed. With breaks, it took the whole day. When I got to the branch that led into Bill and Jenny's place, I called them over to look at it. They denied any knowledge. I told them that's okay, I was going to replace the cable and conduit to the shed anyway, so I'd just cut the stuff going to their place. I ended up jumping the fence and digging so I could rip the pipe and cables out of the ground on their side. A plumber mate came by and helped me fix my water pipe. Fallout. Bill's garden. When I was digging my trench the next morning, I could see it all. Everything wilting. If he'd gotten a heap of water on it right away the night before, who knows? Some of his rare trees may have survived. But by 8 a.m., the salt had been doing its job for 13 hours. When he saw what was happening and figured out the cause, he connected his hose to the irrigation system and started watering. Everything turned yellow/brown. It took him months to get the plants that lived back to being healthy. He told the local horticultural society, of which he was the president, that the pool water had somehow gotten into the irrigation. Bill and Jenny. The morning after, once he'd figured out what had happened, they confronted me. I denied any knowledge, and when he started threatening legal action, I told him about the tags, the video, and utility diaries, and the pool/shed building documents. It drove him nuts not being able to do anything. He knew I did it. Thankfully, I had no more hassle from him. I sold the house after 1 year, after starting, as planned, to avoid higher taxes on the sale. I bought another house and started again. My people. Conveyancer, like a human conveyor belt. They move paper from one place to another. Big, beautiful deck. Best deck ever. It went along with the whole back of the house and halfway around one side. It was 5 meters/16 feet wide, roofed and had a barbecue station and sinks built in. I still miss that deck. My grounds. I managed to not kill any of my plants or stupid grass. Thanks for reading. Glossary. Beer tickets. Beer tickets are money. You hand over a red beer ticket, $20 note, you get 5 beers. A blue ticket, $10 note, gets you 2 beers. These conversion rates are from years ago. I don't know what the current conversion rates are. Corpus delicti is either body of the crime or something to do with cooking. I'm pretty sure I've heard Gordon Ramsay say it before, but then, who could tell? Salting the earth. Salt kills plants. I reckon after seeing the results of 1 bag, had I put in 3 bags, and I would've, there'd have been no recovery. Also, I'm pretty sure the soil would have needed quite a bit of remediation to ever grow anything again. It's kind of lucky for Bill that my mate had only 1 bag. I was in a bit of a mood that day. I had hoped for ground zero. Neighbors/neighborhood. I made sure to write this down as many times as I reasonably could, just to annoy people with the U. It's one of my favorite games. Grass. 15 spots of rain and you have to cut it again. Oh look, now it needs fertilizer. Now it needs shade. Oops, too much shade. Honestly, kids are easier. I remember the time I mowed the lawn as a 10-year-old. Ran over some rocks. That was a fun time. Mowing the lawn with bleeding legs and Dad saying, "That's just a part of lowing them on, mate." To be fair, I did only have shorts and thongs on. But still, fuck grass. And there you have it, folks, the end of today's ProRevenge. If you liked it, be sure to leave a like as well as subscribe, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. As always, my name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.